Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the founder and CEO of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got William Shorten, or Will as we know him. And we're going to talk about the role of a coach in your life and your career. And I always ask this so people have got the opportunity to do their little sales bit before we get into talk. Where can people find you, Will?
So actually, people can find me on LinkedIn because I haven't got a website, never got around to doing that, not the most kind of technically minded. So in fact, all of my contact details on LinkedIn are up to date. My email address and phone number are there. So that's the place to find me, Tim.
And you're William Shorten on LinkedIn, is it? Because
I am, yeah.
I have looked for you before as Will Shorten.
Yeah, no, it is William. Yeah, William Shorten, in fact, PCC at the end of it, which
Yes.
is the accreditation I've got through my coaching. So it's a professional certified coach.
But you're a bit of a polymath, isn't it, when you in terms of your career? Because you've worked in sales, you've worked in HR. So to give us a quick overview of your journey.
So yeah, I'm very much a generalist. Somebody told me off when I once said I'm jack of all trades and master of none. But I started off for most of my professional career, I've worked in two manufacturing organizations. So the first one I joined as a graduate trainee, great experience, went through a paper mill literally from the start to the end of the process. So I very much focused in operations to start off with, ran a paper machine for around about 6 months. Then I moved into kind of technical and R&D support. So going out to both the other paper mills in the group as well as to customers. And then I went the full way into the commercial side and had a job working in sales for 8 years, and then shifted companies and went from sitting one side of the negotiating table to the other. So moved into purchasing. And then after purchasing, I kind of thought, well, what else do I want to do? And one of the themes that had kind of been throughout all of my different roles was I really like working with people and trying to develop people. So I asked the question, was there an opening within HR? And fortunately, there was within learning and development. And so I went and worked there for 5 years, and then left the corporate world and set up my own business as a learning consultant. So I design, facilitate, and run leadership development courses. And then I'm also an accredited professional coach, as I said, through the ICF.
Parlez-vous français?
Un petit peu, oui. J'ai habité en France pendant 5 ans, entre 2013 et 2018. So yeah, 5 years living in Paris, which was a fantastic experience.
And I believe that you're a poet as well.
Well, I'm not so much a poet. I mean, our friend and colleague Eric Doyle, runs this big live breakfast burrito every Thursday morning. So he approached me just under a year ago to say, could I come along and kind of inject a little bit of culture? So I come along on a Thursday morning and tend to read other people's poetry. So he says, I'm not a good enough poet myself. So I call myself the kind of continuity announcer. So I'll read a piece of poetry, and it was funny because yes, I enjoy poetry, but until Eric came and asked me about it, it's allowed me then to kind of do some research every week for the bit I'm going to read, and it's allowed me to kind of increase my knowledge and find a whole load of new poets who I never heard of before. So it's been great.
So why would you want to have a coach? Why is that important?
I think having a coach, it depends really on where you are in your career and what you're doing. But I think especially if you're moving into new roles, if you're kind of transitioning into new roles, maybe you're even kind of stuck in a role, a coach can come and help support you in terms of move your thinking forward and help you to face some of the challenges that you encounter every day. And for me personally, I think the things that it really enabled me to do better is, first of all, by using a coach, it helps you to raise your own self-awareness. So there are perhaps things that you know that you do, behaviors that you exhibit, but you don't quite know why. And by having a coach and having the conversation with a coach allows you to have these things kind of reflected back to you, and you start to make some of the connections between the behaviors you're exhibiting now and perhaps where they came from, early on in your life.
And a coach and a mentor are two different things.
They are absolutely, you're quite right. I mean, I tend to look at them on the kind of same spectrum. And at one end, you've got a coach, and on the other end, you've got a mentor. And basically, what people say the difference is that a mentor is somebody who will have a lot of knowledge about the subject that you want to talk about. So it may well be that you've moved into a sales position, and a sales director is assigned to you to act as a mentor. And they obviously know the sales environment really well, and they can take you through some of the kind of potential pitfalls that you might find. Whereas a coach is somebody who doesn't necessarily have to have a lot of expertise in the area that you're talking about, because their job is actually to help you unlock your own solutions that are going to help you overcome the challenges that you face. And it's on the understanding that as a coach, I haven't lived your life, Tim. I haven't been through your experiences. I don't necessarily know the context in which you're operating. And therefore, it's not my job to come along and advise you and say you should do this or that, but it's to help support you to identify potential solutions in order for you to work through those topics or those challenges that you've brought forward.
So in terms of coaching, what is it? How would you describe it? What is your definition of it?
I think there's, first of all, if you speak to coaches, there's a lot of different definitions. There's a lot of different styles and approaches that people bring. So I'd always say that when you go and start coaching with somebody, actually before you start coaching, interview 2 or 3 different coaches and really find out the style that they bring, and then decide what's best suited for you, for what you're hoping to achieve out of the process. For me personally, I want to be there to support the client. I want to make sure that I can enable the client to come up with those type of solutions that I was just talking about, that to help them unlock things that are going to help them to proceed in whichever area they've identified. I really look to build that kind of level of trust, and to make sure that there is a kind of psychologically safe space for that person to be able to talk, because I think if that exists, then it allows people to open up more and actually start to go a bit deeper to understand what potential problems or obstacles there are. And through doing that, I will look for that person to come up with solutions themselves, but it won't just be asking a whole load of questions. And if there is something, a perspective that I think I could share which could be useful to them, then I would ask permission to do that, in order to help perhaps bring that different perspective.
So whenever you have a coaching session, it should be confidential, shouldn't it not?
It should be, yeah. I mean, generally my rule of thumb is I'll always start a session by saying, this is private and confidential, what we talk about. Even if the coaching session has been set up by that person's organization or by their boss, I will make it very clear that I'm not going to be feeding back what we talk about, because I think I was just referring to that need to have trust in the coaching or coach-coachee relationship. And so you've got to be very transparent about the fact that it is going to be confidential and you're not going to be sharing things.
And coaching isn't just listening, is it?
It's
or
not
asking questions.
It's not. I mean, it's a really tricky state, because of course it very much depends on the person that you've got sitting in front of you, what they're looking to achieve, and how they would like you to support them. In essence, and especially for those who perhaps would talk about the difference between coaching, being a fully accredited coach, and taking a coaching posture, which is something that anybody in any role can do. For the coaching posture, certainly, having active listening and really concentrating on what that person is saying, rather than thinking about what you're going to be, what your next question is going to be. is a key part, and using open questions in order to drill down to fully understand where that person is coming from. Those are kind of key. Then after that, of course, there's a whole host of different avenues you can go down, depending on the situation, depending on what you're looking to achieve. I mean, if you buy any coaching book, most of them will come with either different theories or different tools that you can use. And those can be a framework in certain situations where you think it's relevant. Perhaps if there's a blockage and somebody is finding it difficult to express themselves, sometimes a tool or a technique can help to unlock that. But I think first and foremost that active listening and asking open questions is the kind of core basis of coaching.
So it's listening, it's about questioning, it's about goal setting, it's about empathy, all of those things, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the goal setting is actually something which, depending on what type of coaching you're doing. I mean, a lot of the coaching I do, it will be agreed with an organization or a manager. We'll have set probably 6 sessions to work on over the space of something like 6 to 8 months. And at the start, we'll have a sit-down meeting with the manager of the person who's being coached, and we'll identify with them what they are expecting to be achieved at the end of the 6 sessions. And over the course of those 6 sessions, probably at the midway point, we'll have a quick catch up with that manager, and that manager will be able to give some feedback as to what they've seen in terms of the coachee. And then the same is done at the end of the process. So the objective setting, has to be really clear, because I think it's been one of the things in the past. People have said, we sense that coaching has a benefit, but it's very difficult to identify exactly what. So, setting those targets at the start before you begin any process is really important, so that you've actually got something which you can feel and is more measurable by the end of the process.
And so from a coaching perspective, is this some sort of, I know that we've run sessions internally where we've had individuals that said they've had coaches and all they've done is ask questions.
Yeah. I mean, I think it comes back to being really clear about what goals you're setting and what role you're looking for the coach to provide.
Because I think that there in coaching, actually, there is a push and pull, isn't there, in terms of we can be asking, but we can be telling, can't we?
That's right. There are various models which will allow you to perhaps put forward suggestions or ideas. Again, you have to be careful, because you're not wanting to put words into the coachee's mouth. But it may be that you are more directive in terms of your approach. On the other hand, you may want to be much more kind of open and inquiring, and you want to kind of pull that information out of the coachee rather than kind of push stuff to them.
And you said it a couple of times that in effect you want the coachee to come up with the answers.
Yes, ideally you want to kind of facilitate and enable them to do that, because again, I haven't experienced what you've experienced, and you have to be careful when somebody talks about an experience and you think, aha, I went through something exactly the same. There may be certain elements which are the same, but it's not going to be exactly the same. And therefore you have to allow that person to explain what it's meant to them. If they have reacted in a particular way, where has that come from? What's caused that? And to have that kind of curiosity to try to kind of piece those things together, and at the same time not to make assumptions about why they might be behaving in the way that they have been.
Because you told, I can't remember there was an acronym that you had, that whenever you run a coaching session that you use, what was that?
So I have to thank John Anderson, who was one of my instructors when I did my barefoot coaching course. And John shared with us a great acronym to start off with. So it's kind of Stokers. So
Stokers, that's it.
Stokers. So when you start the coaching conversation, first of all, what's the situation that the person is wanting to talk about? So it's a kind of very high level general topic. T stands for topic itself. So once you start to drill down, you've heard about the situation. What's the specific thing that they want to talk about? The O then stands for objective. So out of this coaching session, what does the coachee want to achieve? The K is know, and that stands for know it. So once you have got to the end of the session, and hopefully you've been talking about your objectives, how will that person know that actually they've managed to find a solution for the topic that they brought at the outset? The E stands for the ethics. So that goes back to what we were talking about in terms of confidentiality. The R stands for role. So, in terms of me as a coach, is there a particular role that you want me to play in our session today in terms of, for instance, do you want me to challenge you? So if you come up with something and, well, I'm not sure, do you want me to come back and challenge you on that? And if you do want me to challenge you, what kind of strength of challenge? Because again, if you had a scale of 1 to 10, what I consider to be a 5, maybe an 8 to somebody else. So to define that. And then the last is, so where do you want to start? And how do you then begin the kind of process? So that's quite a nice, very kind of general structure that you can use. There's another one which lots of people have heard from if they've been on any type of coaching course, which is the GROW model, which came out of Sir John Whitmore, developed over 20 years ago. And it's very, very similar in terms of the G stands for the goal. So again, what are you hoping to achieve from the coaching session that you're going to have? And as with the other model, it's good if you can be as specific as you can, because if it's very general, then you're not necessarily going to know that you've achieved that goal. The R stands for reality. So when you're working through your goal, it may be that I say, well, I want to play cricket for England in 5 years' time. Well, actually, what's the reality that that's going to happen at this stage of my life? So that's a way to make sure that you're kind of balancing out the goal and is it realistic. The O stands for options, so that when you start to get into kind of solutions mode, what are all the options that are out there in terms of helping you move towards that goal? And then the W stands for way forward, or will. How are you going to commit? What are the steps and actions that you're going to put in place to make your goal happen? Right. So yeah, a couple of very, very simple structures, frameworks that you can use there. And those are pertinent for anybody. If you're working as a manager and you've got one of your team coming to you and they're struggling with something, why the GROW technique is so popular is it's a very kind of simple tool to follow and is very beneficial to those who go through it.
So you don't actually need to be a trained coach to coach people, but by using those techniques and having and understand Stoker's and GROW, it allows you to provide a framework, I guess.
I think that's it. And I talked a minute or two ago about the difference between being a coach and having a coaching posture. So the coaching posture is something that if you make sure that you're kind of following active listening, if you ask open questions, you can use a framework either like Stoker's or like GROW in order then to kind of give a direction to that kind of discussion. So those are kind of tools and techniques that anybody can use, whatever their position. You don't have to be an accredited coach to be able to utilize those.
And so, I mean, I realize you're biased because you're a coach, but what is it that people can get out of having a coach or an independent coach in terms of their helping their career or maybe working on a project or something?
I think it's just this opportunity to work with somebody who is outside of the organization or outside of your particular realm, who is there to listen and to support you, but also to help you find your solutions, because that's something that's kind of quite empowering. You know, we're quite used sometimes to going to our boss and being told to do something, and we go and do it, and actually, well, I shouldn't have done it that way, or it didn't feel right to me. This allows you, through becoming kind of more self-aware about how you act and behave, I think it allows you to be more effective in the interactions that you have with others.
I think that's great counsel, Will. I mean, you know, it's I probably said at the beginning, I can't remember, but you know, all sports people have coaches.
Yeah.
You know, in fact, they have multiple coaches.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that certainly something that I think that people should tap into, and I highly recommend it.
And I think the interesting thing making that comparison with sports coaches is that sports coaches now have also gone down to that extra level, because, you know, rather than just having one coach who would look after everything for you, there's a breakdown now and kind of split out into the specific technicalities that an individual or a sports team are looking at. So if you take a rugby team, you've got your head coach, but you've got your attack coach, you've got a defense coach, you've got a scrummaging coach, you've got a kicking coach. All of those, because they recognize that rather than just have something general, you have to have a kind of specific support for that particular skill or competence that you're looking to develop.
Will, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you to Claire, Andy, and Gabriel.
Gabriel, yeah, no, I know Gabriel from my time in Saint-Gobain, so it's great to see he came through one of our leadership courses, and so knows Grow Model very well. So it's right. Yeah, lovely to see all of them. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
So remind everybody, Will, where they can find you.
They can find me on my LinkedIn page, William Shorten PCC, and my details of my email and phone number are there.
And they can find you on the Breakfast Burrito.
Big Breakfast Burrito every Thursday morning at 7:45 UK time.
And they can find that on your LinkedIn profile, can't they?
They can find that on my LinkedIn profile, and as well, of course, our DLA Ignite digital download, which is on a Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. UK time.
2 p.m. UK time, yes. And you're guest editor this week.
I've been given a second go, surprisingly, so I must have done something right last week.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Will, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Really appreciate it as well.
Take care. All the best. Engagement as well. Thank you, everybody.